ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 6 on the human brain and its potentials, arousing the hidden potentials of brain. In terms of physico-chemical sciences, the brain is an organ made up of some proteins and other chemicals. Neurological research has shown that the gray matter in the outer brain contains about 1,000 billion cells called neurons. The cerebellum consists of about 12,000 billion nerves, and the spinal column contains about 1.5 billion of extra nerves, which collectively constitute the nervous system. There are about 100 billion small cells called xyla that are connected with the neuroglia. A large variety of hormones and other proteins and neurotransmitters are produced or released in the brain. However, these biochemicals cannot give rise to biological consciousness by themselves. In fact, it is the presence of consciousness which makes possible the generation and reaction of these materials, and which perform the majestic functions in the brain with the help of these substances. If brain is only a body of flesh and bones made up of some specific chemicals, then the animals which have brains bigger in size than the human brain would have had larger varieties and quantities of neurochemicals in their brains. Moreover, in that case, the functions and potentials of the brain would also have been varying in proportion of its size and weight. As an organ, the brain of an elephant or a whale is much bigger in size, weight, and physical strength than the human brain. However, it is well known that the mental faculties and potentials of these animals exist nowhere when compared with those of the humans. Scientific investigations reveal that the organization and subtle structure of the brains of these animals is in a primitive state as compared to the fine development of human brain. Dr. Wilder Penn, a specialist in neurosurgery, has found that the temporal cortex, dark strips surrounding the internal portion of human brain, contain age-old memories in a dormant state. The area of these strips is about 25 square inches. Right behind the temples lies the temporal cortex, which generates and regulates the memory functions. Enormous varieties of events and visual moments take place in front of our eyes every day. We notice only some of these. Out of those noticed attentively, only a few are remembered or retained in the memory. In general, even what we remembered about an event on the day it occurred, that becomes hazy in our active memory after several days. We remember the associated matters only vaguely. However, according to the experts like Dr. Wilderpen, whether we were attentive or not, whether we remember something clearly or partly with a vague memory, Whether we recall it for a long time or forget it in few seconds, everything, whatever happened in front of our eyes or whatever has been perceived by other sense organs gets registered in our temporal cortex. Dr. Wilderpen had successfully awakened the memory concerning unimportant and unthinkable events of many people by inducing electrical impulses into these sensitive compartments of the brain. The temporal cortex plays major roles in the brains of the people who possess exceptionally sharp memory. The functions of the strips-like structures in this region are remarkable in this regard. The memory of some people is so extraordinary that it makes records in history. For instance, Ravi Eliza of Lithuania had crammed over 20,000 books by heart. His astonishing memory was tested many times by different means and it was always found to be perfect. A French leader, Leon Gambetta, was fond of Victor Hugo's poetry. He remembered the context of thousands of pages of Hugo's writings and used to cite them with detailed reference as and when required he could even cite the page numbers correctly. It is said that about the ancient Indian scriptures that their texts were orally recited and were not written in any script for thousands of years. The four Vedas, Brahmanas, Arnyakas, Nirukta, Nighantu, and Upanishads, etc., were all taught and learnt verbally under the Guru Sishya system of the ancient schools. The Shishya disciple used to learn and remember whatever was recited and verbally taught by his Guru Master. Because of being learnt by hearing, the contents of the Vedas, Upanishads, and other Shastras were named as Shrutis, meaning heard. That sounds amazing because the contents of these scriptures constitute a colossal amount of text. Even the now available hymns, mantras of the Vedas would be spread in about 5,000 pages of printed journals. Imagine how those many mantras, their linguistic disciplines, patterns of recitations, meanings, and analysis and successive deliberations in the form of Upanishads, Puranas, Brahmanas, etc. were preserved for ages by the scholars of yore just by the power of memory. Harry Nelson Pillsbury, the American Grand Master who was known as a magician of chess, used to remember over 20 types of moves associated with different stages of the game simultaneously and used to guide the players accordingly. He used to guide so many moves at a time quite swiftly and efficiently. This was also a live example of multiple processing of exceptionally sharp memory. Dr. Holger Hayden of the Gothenburg University, Sweden has analyzed the brain functions in terms of molecular biological activities. He has found that learning a topic or method that requires concentration and thinking results in increased supply of some important neurotransmitters. The neurons excited thereby become more sensitive and expand the level of intellect. According to Dr. Hedin, the development of the faculties of brain does not depend only on school education or what one learns from the relatives and friends, surrounding environment and circumstances. Because this kind of development by and large amounts only to an increase in knowledge and information. He believes that the company of people having strong willpower, inner strength, and sublime consciousness offers inducing inspiration for proper nourishment of the brain. The elevated level of the prana of such people gives strength to the weak minds. People having low IQ can improve their wisdom and intellectual potentials above the average level if they live in closed contact of brilliant and talented people for substantial amount of time with a consistent aspiration to uplift their own mental level. Dr. Haddon's theory explains it as follows. As the electrical currents flow through the wires of good conductors connected to the source of electricity, similarly, the aura of the bioelectrical energy of the talented, eminent, and awakened brains induces certain kind of charge in the receptive brains of others who are in their contact. Dr. George Delgado had also investigated the possibilities of transmitting the electrical charge from one's brain to excite or inhibit the activities of other internal or external centers which are sensitive to this charge. Hypnotism is a process in which the bioelectrical energy of the stronger brain is used to attract and control the weaker brains within a limited domain of influence. The notorious brainwash techniques known in the history as being used by some of the communist regimes to convert the thinking of anti-communist into pro-ones also involve similar effects of the brain waves. In the present times, sophisticated electronic devices are also tried to induce or alter the electrical flows inside one's brain and hence to control his her mental and physiological activities. Experiments of these kinds have so far been successful only to the extent that the subject's motor and sensory activities and thinking can be controlled externally as long as the device transducer is connected to the latter's brain without causing any pain or abnormal excitement. As the experiment is put off or the external electrical impulses are weakened, the subject's original tendencies begin to take over and the effects of experiment vanish pretty fast. While analyzing the effects of electrical currents on human brain, Dr. Delgado had remarked that controlling certain functions of the brain by external electrical charges is like forcefully governing the weaker ones with the help of might and weapons. Such treatments can create the effects of hypnotism and mesmerism and may be used for medical applications, but they cannot be successful in rousing the latent potentials of the brain. According to Dr. Delgado, one can realize and awaken the subtle powers of his brain by his own determination, mental concentration, and inner strength. This conclusion also signifies the role of spiritual yoga sadhanas in extraordinary accomplishments. The stable water of a pond can be embarked with ease. However, the running water of rivers is difficult to be restrained. It requires construction of stout dams and substantial efforts for this purpose. The impulses of awakened brain mind are more powerful than the high speed currents of a river. The only way to control and make use of their potential is to direct them towards some creative mental activity. The tube wells may supply only limited amount of water for several years, but the naturally blown streams of fountains can continue to do so forever. Continuous flow by the laws of nature maintains the purity and motion of these streams. The same is true of the currents of mental energy. If all the awakened faculties of the brain are subjected to continuous creative use, they get more refined and help elevate the immense eternal powers of the brain. If the faculties of the brain mind are aroused from the dormant state into the active one and are subject to controlled creative use, then the brain can be fully awakened with its astonishing potentials and talents. Chapter 9, Scientific Experiments of Mental Sublimation. Often people consider the intellectual potentials to be God gifted as per one's fate and largely remain neutral towards refining the creativity of brain. Many times people are found complaining about not being able to control their mind or improve their intellectual activities. They should note that practice makes one perfect. Physical fitness and might is gained by regular physical exercises. Knowledge is attained by education and thorough studies, and prosperity by industrious business. Similarly, the magical Pandora's box of the brain can be opened and cleaned. The inner powers of the mind may also be culminated by dedicated practices of sadhana performed with sincerity and faith. Based on their understanding of the neuronal activities in the brain and analysis of different hormonal secretions, etc., the psychochemists like Dr. Skinner hope for tailoring the mental functions in laboratories. They opine that one's mental makeup and personality could be sublimated up to the high level of the divinity, or on the contrary, could be declined to fall down to that of a demon by corresponding transformation and control of the bioelectrical and neurochemical activities inside his brain. Several neurochemists, including Dr. Alan Jack and Mark Rosenberg of Germany, are experimenting on the possibilities of regulating the functions and potentials of the brain in desired direction. Dr. Nathan Klein of the Rockland Hospital, New York, had prepared an extract from a Himalayan herb called Sarpagandha. This chemical was found to suppress mental excitations, purification, and further processing of this chemical gave rise to the production of the series of medicines like pipradol, chloropromazine, maprobazar, etc. These tranquilizers help relieve the patient temporarily from anxiety, fear, excitation, and anger. One tablet of this kind can offer relax sleep in night. This is about Western pharmaceutical development. The Indian science of medicine, Ayurveda recommends the use of natural products for such treatments. Varieties of herbs are effectively used as samka tranquilizers. These are called nidra janka, which induce sound sleep, and aksepahar, which absorb mental worries and irritations. Modern pharmacologists and neurologists are also attracted towards the use of these herbs because they create positive effects in a manner harmonious to the natural functioning of the brain. The discoveries of rishis like Charak and Susruta, the founders of Ayurvedic treatment, are therefore being reinvestigated by many researchers today. As in other branches of biomedical sciences, the research experiments of neurochemicals and the effects of chemicals on the neuronal activities are first conducted on animals before making any test on the human subject. Dr. Robert Thompson and James McConnell of the Texas University had experimented on a species of planarian and shown that the activities of brain could be suppressed or stimulated by electrical impulses. Dr. Alan Jacobson of the University of California had injected the RNA of trained rats into the brains of untrained rats. He then observed that the latter also began to behave like the trained ones. In the context of success of the experiments of the above kind, Dr. Otto Skymel of the State University of Michigan had declared that it appears now as if we have got the power to control the human brain. However, we have to be careful that such scientific achievements are used only for the betterment of people. We also have to be aware of the risk that some power hungry nations might use such technological means to forcefully orient people's mentality towards their own ideology. Professors Haskin, Huxley, and Achilles had received the Nobel Prize in Medicine for their significant research work in neurology. They had discovered a specific electrical charge in neurons and had investigated how this electric current flows through the neuronal circuits and transmits the information signals so effectively as if the neurons were constantly communicating via telephones. The nerve fibers are like electrical wires which carry the information signals through the electrical impulses. Each fiber has a length of over 100,000 miles, approximately 1,61,000 kilometers, and its thickness is about a hundredth fraction of an inch. These findings were of fundamental importance in understanding the magnificent structure and unlimited potentials of the brain. The research work initiated by Sir William Penfield in the 18th century to investigate the functions of brain is still going on, and the above stated results are parts of the series of milestones in this long journey. Neuroscientists consider that the brain has two compartments. First one, the primitive or the animal brain, which assimilates the inherited habits, inner tendencies, and animal instincts, and the other, the newer and more evolved brain, which is acquired only by the humans. The first part contains the functional centers of the feelings of pain, hunger, fear, fatigue, concupiscence, and other desires, along with the instincts of struggle and fight, etc., which are essential for the survival and expansion of any species. The more developed part of the matured brain consists of highly evolved structures like the prefrontal prefrontal lobes that are associated with intellectual activities, logical, analyst, reasoning, civic sense, social etiquette, capabilities of thinking, planning, and decision making, etc., are regulated from this part. Rise and control of emotional excitement is also triggered from this functional unit of the human brain. Scientific experiments on controlling or hypnotizing the animal brain by electrical and chemical treatments have been very successful, as stated earlier in some experiments. Electrodes connected to the brains of guinea pigs were used to transmit electrical impulses. Significant changes in the natural tendencies of the subjects were recorded. For instance, the cats were found as getting scared of the rats in a fight of a tiger and a rabbit. The mightier was made sit quietly in a corner while the tiny rabbit was triggered to attack the former with full confidence of victory. Animals in general indulge in sexual relations with homogeneous species. However, in the above types of experiments, they were found to excited to have sex with partners from other species too. Similar abnormal effects were observed in the eating habits, sleeping cycles, etc. of the animals who were given specific treatment by electrical or chemical means, leaving the food of their liking. They were made eat what they normally would not even touch. Several such treatments have worked well on the human's primitive brains too. One can work at a stretch without sleeping for a long time, or can sleep as and when desired with the help of such treatments. Experiments on the developed component of the brain encompass psychotherapeutic applications along with electrical and chemical ones. Some communist countries have even tried using these techniques for brain washing so as to change the minds of the opponents of their ideology. Considering the intellectual brain to be the sole regulator of the development of one's personality, several scientists have focused their research on finding the methods of psychological treatments for rousing its potentials. They accept the importance of familial and social atmosphere in molding the nature and way of thinking of a person. Some sociologists and psychologists are therefore engaged in investigating the traditional methods whose incorporation in the educational and social system would make the future generations more courageous, intelligent, and virtuous than the present ones. Renowned Russian scientist Bin had demonstrated by many experiments that two different types of hormones secreted by the glands in the brain into the bloodstream account for the feelings of cheerfulness or gloom. Neither of the hormones is secreted automatically. The secretion of a hormone which gives rise to specific feelings, psychosomatic manifestations, is triggered by the corresponding thoughts and emotions. For instance, the sentiments and thoughts of malice activate the secretion of hormones which generate the feelings of mental restlessness, irritation, or excitement. According to Dr. Anorbin, there are specific activity centers in the brain which are linked with reticular formations. A wide variety of hormones are secreted from these centers of brain functions. Secretion of certain types of hormones is manifested in cheerfulness, smile, laughter, gentleness, modesty, etc. The other type of hormones, on the contrary, give rise to depression, sorrow, anxiety, and perplexity, etc. Above kind of research findings have further brought into light the enormous capabilities of our brains. The human brain is like a God, which is gloriously enthroned in the kingdom of one's life and which can bestow everything one desires for. The outcome of worshipping external deities might be suspicious at times, however, the sadhana of elevating the mental system and awakening the power of this internal God of inner self is performed with faith, zeal, and sincerity will certainly bestow divine beatitudes and leads to culmination of one's life in all respects. The science of spirituality is more advanced than the modern neuroscience in terms of awakening and refining the potentials of human brain mind. Current research in brain sciences includes investigation of methods and development of appropriate device by which to awaken and control specific faculties of human brain. However, each step of progress in this direction adds to the complex issues of what could be the associated side effects or how to prevent consequent misuse of the resulting techniques and products. For example, if any such invention is used sometime to create special fields of energy waves which can change the mentality and structural or functional features of the brains of the people present within specific domains of influence, then this forced transformation will be carried over by heredity into the offsprings of these people continuously from generation to generation without the possibility of any reversal. A natural structure of process could be broken, disturbed, or transmuted by a single shock or treatment. However, further changes changes in it may not be feasible. Wet wood might be folded into a specific shape sometimes, but applying the same operation on it would not be possible repeatedly. It would simply break the wood. Natural system of human brain is like the wet wood in this example. The attempts of transforming its natural state by external physical means could be harmful and irreversible if one would mold the wet wood into a particular shape by processing it in the heat of radioactive furnaces. Then no further change in its shape would ever be possible. Rapid transmutation of the brain mental functions by electrochemical conditioning may similarly lead to disaster effects which would be beyond control. The method of spiritual sadhana were developed in accordance with the natural tendencies of human mind and were based on absolute realization of the inner strength and faculties of brain. The Pioneers of this science, the rishis had given due importance to careful handling and proper nourishment of the brain. They had first experimented on their own brains and bodies and invented the methods of spiritual training for the awakening of the unlimited power of subtle consciousness. A hierarchical system for practicing of the sadhana of gradually higher level was devised by them so that everybody could benefit from such a sadhana as per one's spiritual fitness and gradually attain ultimate success. Practicing the yoga sadhana in a pure, austere, and altruistic life, accompanied by focused thinking and swadhyaya, can elevate the faculties of one's brain mind. This may transmute intellectual transiency and mental power of a devoted yogi sadhaka so much that he would be able to change the surrounding environment by the currents of his sublime prana and inspire others towards moral conduct and divine ideals. The Indian sages of yore had attained such astonishing potentials and were using them for the welfare of all living beings. The influence of their superconscious mind used to inspire such thoughts and emotions in ordinary people, which could activate specific latent centers of the subliminal currents of prana in the inner minds of the latter without disturbing their natural system at structural and functional level of their brains. The attempts of modern brain scientists are, as described earlier, based on external means. The diseases like amnesia, loss of memory of old age are now being treated with the help of medicines like Celeste consisting of magnesium pamolin, while investigations are on to find more effective medicines for sharpening the memory. At the same time, search is also being made for possible modes of treatment to wipe out specific pieces of memory, such as those associated with the tragic moments or evil thoughts, etc. If memory of a person is so sharp that no thought or image of past events gets banned from its active region, then he might grow mad because this would block the natural flow of his thoughts and emotions. The intensity of shocks or sorrows generated by the events of severe insults, demise of a near and dear ones, or a tragedy, etc., reduces gradually as their remembrance gets fitted in one's memory. This natural process is essential for mental health. Otherwise, the overactive memory would become problematic, like an overstressed and overexcited state of mind. Thus, both types of medicines would be useful provided they are given to the patients who need associated treatment in order to bring their brains up to a normal level. Whatever we eat, that is not only used in making the blood and flesh of our body, rather it affects the orientation of our brain functions and our mental consciousness. Each material substance, like the living beings, has its own natural tendency. The eatables are classified in Ayurveda according to the levels of Satoguna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. The three fundamental tendencies: Sat represents absolute truth, aestheticity, and equilibrium. Raj corresponds to average worldly activities. Tam symbolizes the darkness, inertness, sinful tendencies of nature of its Jada and Chetan form. The extent of presence of the different gunas, qualities in a substance, correspond to the types of effects it, if eaten or used, would have on the physical health, thoughts, and emotions. This is how different substances were categorized as worth eating or prohibited, etc., in the traditional Indian system. Ancient scriptures also mention of certain preparations like Yajnacharu, Panchamrta, Somrasa, Brahmakalpa, etc. as divine foods. The religious rituals associated with these preparations of natural products like cow's fresh milk and Himalayan herbs were aimed at awakening up to the maximum level the satoguna in the corresponding substances. This was achieved by the sublime combination of the subtle energies of the mantras and the sacrificial fire of yaga and internal power. The elevated Chetana of the spiritually refined persons, sadhakas who used to perform these rituals. Several rituals of the above kinds are still practiced as parts of a religious tradition in some parts of the Indian society. The special preparations of Yajna Charu, Pancha, Amritas, etc. are distributed as Deva Prasada, blessed food among all the people participating in specific religious functions or auspicious celebrations accompanied by yaga. If prepared by true saints and spiritually elevated sadhakas, the Dev-prasada of Satoguni substance can prove to be an excellent brain tonic and mental healer. The subtle power of this Deva-prasada can inspire virtuous thoughts and divine sentiments and sublimate the internal power of the brains of all those who eat it with sincere feelings of respect and faith. This unique type of psychotherapy based on use of Satoguni eatables was very popular in ancient India. The yogis and sages of the time had successfully used it to elevate the physical and mental and spiritual potentials of people from all walks of society and had thereby offered enormous benefits of global welfare. The artificial lifestyle of the modern times has given rise to excessive use of chemicals for mental stimulations in one form or the other. The use of Brahmi, Somrasa, and Aswas of the olden days is now replaced by consumption of tea, coffee, tobacco, etc. Even intoxication by wine, liquor, cannabis, LSD, heroin, and a whole lot of other narcotics, etc., has found place in human society. Production and consumption of several types of tranquilizers has also increased because more and more people nowadays need them for relief, though temporarily, from mental stress and tension. According to some physiologists, among other causes, excess of uric and also induces the feelings of anger, excitation, irritation, anguish, and depression. Dr. Segmiller, Tizena, Blum, and Kelly have shown that deficiencies of an enzyme called hypoxanthine guanine phosphorylated transferase give rise to excessive production of uric acid. Deficiency of this enzyme is more common in men than in women. This is the reason why men are often found to be more short-tempered than women. If appropriate quantities of this transferase is injected into his bloodstream, is short-tempered or vexed man could be cheered up to enjoy a joyous mood. I, the physiochemical imbalances might affect certain hormones and hence give rise to mental perturbations or perplexities of different kinds. It may therefore be possible to cure the associated diseases or abnormalities by chemical, electrical, or other external modes of treatment. However, such attempts should be limited to specific applications only. These types of treatment should be used only if a thorough checkup shows the cause of sickness is physico chemical and not psychological. Care should also be taken to ensure that the treatments would not have any side effects on the functioning of brain. Otherwise, some power-hungry, selfish people could misuse such treatments and applications. No amount of physical energy could ever control the internal power of human consciousness. Even if one thinks that the advancement of science and technology could one day be able to control the so far known functions of human brain, he should also envisage the dangers associated with such achievements. By attaining such potentials, a handful of scientists would be able to dictate the minds of all humans on the earth. The human race would then reproduce the generations of mentally slaves. These kinds of advanced developments would invite disaster battles of human civilization and culture. The safest way, therefore, would be to learn to balance one's mind by one's own determination and follow the path shown by the great personalities to rouse and refine the mental faculties and talents in a natural way. Experiments of further sublimation and culmination of the internal unconscious and subtler power of brain should be conducted under the adept guidance of experienced psychologists and mentors of spirituality within the norms set by the ancient sages toward the noble purpose of welfare of all. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Namaskar, my dear friends.